Welcome to this Christmas episode of The Heart of the Matter. Today your three presenters are here to present this episode. We have Opuiyo and Omilola and myself presenting this episode of The Heart of the Matter. Really what we want to do is to look over the last 12 months and look over the different episodes that we've brought. You know, just thinking about the episodes, I'm sure there are some episodes that we enjoyed, we really enjoyed presenting, people that we enjoyed talking to, and so on. So, over to you.
Well, okay. There's a number that I particularly remember, but one that continues to stick in my mind is the episode I did with the blind photographer. That just made me understand how awesome God is, because, you know, even those of us that are without so-called disabilities, able-bodied, you know, fully sighted, can often struggle to take a good photograph. What more if you're, you know, you're sightless? And this young lady impressed me a lot because she'd learned, you know, by sensing what to do. And we were very privileged to see some of her pictures, you know, on screen, and they were truly awesome. So that's one that really sticks with me. How do you do it?
It's true, by the grace of God, and I take photographer through the voice of the people.
What about you, Omi?
Well, talking about blindness, I recently did one with Kobam, who is a blind music producer, and the title of the episode was The Dreamer. And so you think a blind person dreaming, but one thing he said was he dreams, he constantly dreams. Sometimes he sits in his bathroom and then he's dreaming of the things he wants to achieve, and he has achieved so much. And I remember he talks about the lessons he's learned from blindness, and one of the things was focus. That because he's blind, he's able to focus on one thing. That sometimes sight gives you distraction. So you go to a store and you want to buy something, but because you see so many other things around you, you get distracted. But for him, he's been able to focus. Blindness has taught him how to trust, because he has no choice but to trust people. So even if some people break that trust, he has to trust them over and over again. So that was just phenomenal for me.
You're dreaming of being a runner, but you're an amputee or whatever it is, and it just seems like it cannot happen. There's nothing wrong with you being the first. I didn't know of any blind producer in Nigeria when I decided I wanted to do, you know, music production.
What about you, Pastor?
Well, I remember the episode with Tito Idakula. She'd just been through tragedies in her life, and God picked her up and gave her a mission to pick up other people that had also been through tragedies. And that really, you know, reminds me of the scripture that says that God comforts us in our tribulation so that we would be able to comfort others with the comfort wherein we have been comforted of God. When you say we don't talk enough.
As a culture, we don't talk about emotional issues.
Should we be talking to somebody? Should we be talking to each other?
I think we should talk to each other and talk to somebody. I think it's okay to be open and honest.
So that was really special for me.
To add to Tito's, it's amazing because through this hope, Tito is my friend, so I've just seen her find purpose. Usually, when God wants to take you to a new level, it's from your challenges. The lady that sang Miracle Worker, that's a popular Christian song now, she talks about how when her niece was sick and she was praying for healing for her niece, and that was when God dropped the song in her heart, Miracle Worker, come and do a miracle today. And now churches all over the world are singing that song. So it was out of that challenge that song came, and you know, sort of like Tito's story. So it just gives me a new perspective on challenges. Like through your challenges, God is going to birth something amazing from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the Bible does tell us to rejoice when we face trials and tribulations, you know, because that way you can let yourself be perfected, you know, through those experiences. One other episode I think a lot about is the young man who was previously a drug addict, and he came out of this, you know, drug addiction. He actually spent some time in an asylum. That's how bad it was. He talked about how he used to, at some points, run around naked in the street. It was that bad. But today he speaks to, school children, teaching them to stay off drugs. He's written a number of books. At one point he said he just stopped taking the medication and he's never looked back. And actually we saw some feedback that came through social media, about that particular episode, and people were really touched by that. you know, it really inspired. And one testimony I remember, as I think it was a medical practitioner who talked about, you know, he had tears come to his eyes because he realizes at one point it's not just about the healing that they as medical doctors do. There's a different level. And I've heard a lot of doctor friends say things like, they care, but it's God who really heals. You know, so that really has struck with me, that people can overcome even the most apparently impossible of things.
The doctor said for the rest of my life that I have to be on drugs, that the state I came back now was worse than the state I came in the first time. You know, that things have gone worse now. Then I have to be on those drugs for the rest of my life. I remember really that day when we were leaving, when they discharged us, my elder brother in Yoruba said to me, said, Akin, you know, and I started shedding tears.
But the Bible says what's impossible with man is not impossible with God, so there you go.
You know, when you talk about drug addictions, it's very rare that you find people that actually got over them.
Exactly.
You know, they go for rehabilitation, but very often they go back to
They have
it.
a relapse. Yes.
Only God can get you off an addiction. That's...
To take the conversation another way, another angle, we had this discussion with a lady called Naomi Lucas on the blind side of unemployment in Nigeria. And so before I had that interview with her, I always used to think that the reason we had the people are unemployed is because we have no jobs. However, she brought another perspective. She said we have a skills problem, not an unemployment problem. That we actually have the manpower, we have the people, but no one is skilled enough. So I have a job, but I can't find anyone to, you know, fit the job requirements because of a lack of skill. So people are not developing themselves. And for me, that was just profound. And I thought, you know, and she talks about the education system. I said how her lecturer was using his own notes that his own teacher taught him when he was in school as a student. That was the notes, those were the notes he was using to teach them. And I was
years
like...
and years later,
yes,
when things would have moved
changed,
on. Wow.
You know?
Yes.
And so for me, it just made the problem so big, and I was just like, wow, what are we going to do? Especially in a country like Nigeria, where we have predominantly young population.
Yes, yes.
Are you just going to keep saying, but they didn't teach us, they didn't teach... By the time you're out of school, nobody really cares who taught you or who didn't teach you. They just want to know what you know. So the problem is the system.
And I think when you talk about unemployment, you know, we seem to focus on the fact that there aren't any jobs, but we have such a huge market, 177 million people to provide food for, to provide clothing for, to provide goods and services for. And so unemployment is generated when people can be enterprising, when people are free to invest, and employment, jobs come.
Jobs can be created. And you know, a very interesting thing, even in those statistics, is when you look at Nigeria, a large percentage of industry, or if you like, of job creation is actually the informal sector. Now, because there's not a lot of hard data about it, we don't really know, but probably about 70% or more is that. So, Pastor, what you just said about that enabling environment is the critical thing. It's not for the government. People say, government should go and create jobs. It's not for government to create jobs. Actually, the jobs come through enterprising individuals, entrepreneurs, private investors, and people willing themselves, even the one-man or two-man business, willing to go out and do what they have to do. But what has to happen is we've got to see a better enabling environment. And I remember one of the episodes that you did, Pastor, was looking at the elections and some of that aspect. We now have a new government, you know, we're coming to the end of one year, but moving into a new year. This is a golden opportunity for the country, surely.
What this election, you know, the voting meant to so many people, it's an opportunity for a change. You know, the Nigerians chose Buhari for a purpose and Osinbajo for a purpose.
What government need to do now is to begin to address priorities and redirect all of these issues. How do we create technical vocations? You see now you have institutions that are training graduates after university so that they'll be fit, they'll be suitable.
You know, and let's just keep on praying for them.
Yes.
You know, because as you said, creating the enabling environment is the job of government.
Yes.
And then enterprise just begins to happen.
We'll go from there.
I also remember an episode we talked about marriage. We had NG and Rich. Yes. We talked about marriage, and marriage has become such an issue, you know, because back in the day, and I know that not all of us can easily say back in the day, but back in the day when people got married, it was for life.
Yes.
They never entered into marriage thinking, well, if it doesn't work, I'll come out and find some man, you know. And Rich and Nchi actually deal with the day-to-day, the nitty-gritty of helping people deal with issues in marriage.
We also did one, the woman talk
and man talk
on marriage, where we had couples. So he interviewed the men, and I interviewed the women. But generally what I'm finding now is, when I was younger, before I got married, I used to read Pastor Bimbo Odukoya's book on how to find a partner. But getting married, there was no one teaching on how to keep a marriage.
Yes.
And so a lot of the things I had to learn and unlearn through my own mistakes. But Pastor, you started something on Twitter now called Family Matters.
Yes.
And it's amazing. I mean, just doing the Twitter notes and just listening and learning and the response of people. We need more people talking about how to keep the marriage. I also attended a session with Mrs. Ibukun Awoshika, who's the first female chair of First Bank. And I thought she was going to talk about entrepreneurship and all of that. But the first thing she said was, you have to have the right foundation, marry the right husband, and honor your spouse. And then she began to tell us young ladies how to honor your spouse, how to respect your husband, talking about how she knelt down in front of him at her 50th birthday, and lots of these things that we hadn't heard before. So I think it's important that people begin to talk more on, because a lot of marriages are failing. What do you think?
No, I mean, it's interesting. One of the critical things for me that came out of that man talk session was, the GLA husbands, because it was, people drawn from our congregation, GLA husbands actually understanding better that when you say, a wife should, submit to their husbands, it doesn't give husbands the right to somehow lord it over their wives, dominate. I mean, that's totally passé, The way it's actually about a mutual respect. The Bible actually also exhorts husbands to submit unto their wives, so it's not one-way traffic. And the other important thing was the art of communication. The truth is that women tend to be more communicative than men. Men, we tend to grunt a lot, or we're couch potatoes, we just want the remote control. So learning to listen to our wives.
And know your love languages.
Know your love languages. And I have to say, I was quite awestruck by our ladies. They were very open about lots of things, marriage, sex, and all of that. It's all part of it, and I took some strong messages away from Man Talk.
At times, most people will say, yes, you are the man of the house. You have to just make a decision and say, yes, it's right, no, it's left. But nowadays, when you find out you get yourself in the marriage, you can't make all those decisions solely. You just have to consult.
The challenge we have, the contributing factor to conflict is the issue of communication.
Sometimes men can think that, okay, for you to feel cherished is that other thing that you do in the bedroom. And I'm like, no, it's sex. I'm sorry. There are two different things. To me, it's like we've not talked all day. You've not sent me text messages. Yes, I'm sorry. You have to make a conscious effort. Exactly. Yes, you've not. When we're dating, you used to send me poems. You used to send me lovely texts. Then it's now night time, and you want something, and I'm like,
just happen that
it's
way.
not. There's no button
Exactly.
that we switch it off and on. No.
I want to just ask you about love language, because this is the second time today, and we're just interviewing somebody, they're talking about love language. What is love language?
I think it's the way you express love. So for instance, I like affection, I like attention, but my husband's love language is he does things. So he makes sure everything is in order. So as far as he's concerned, by doing all of that, he's showing me love. So he's making sure everything in the house is working, the children are okay. But for me, sitting down with me and talking to me is my love language, but he's not a talker. So I think it's important so he's thinking and feeling that he's showing me love, but then before this understanding, I'm thinking you're not,
But you see, there's that other book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, or is it the other way around? Yeah. That's another thing, again, that came out for me from Men Talk. The way that we men express, we're very physical, visual beings. But women, tend to be driven more by intimacy and the softer side. So I think part of it is learning, yes, your partner's language, but it's also understanding that we're slightly different in our makeup. But of course, if we don't take account of those things, that's where you begin to have a lot of stresses in marriage. No communication, no intimacy. Of course, often you have things like infidelity creeps in, you have financial stress creep in, and you have to learn to overcome all of those things. Another very important thing, Pastor, I learned was about forgiveness, the ability to be able to put it behind and to know that when you forgive, you're actually doing it more for you than even for the person who afflicted you, because you avoid the bitterness that comes with allowing unforgiveness to stay in you. Yes.
We're going to need to go on a break right now because I'm just getting into this conversation. But viewers, please stay tuned to The Heart of the Matter. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to this Christmas episode of The Heart of the Matter, where your presenters are talking about the different episodes we've brought to you over the course of this year, and just reminiscing and talk about the lessons we've learned. Omi, you interviewed Layla Fowler about power dressing. What did that bring out?
Okay, so basically, she owns a store where she sells clothes, and because she went through a certain challenge in her life, and she came up with the vision that there are a couple of women, who are going through challenges in life, and just by giving them a nice outfit to wear and dressing them up and makeup, that it sort of builds confidence in them. And so we interviewed her, and we also interviewed some of the ladies, and we could just see the power of, you underestimate the power of a beautiful outfit. It did something to those ladies. It transformed them, and for a minute and it's a shopping experience. So they have all these clothes that people donate. Most of them are used clothes, but then they have they make it into a store and then hang the clothes. So you actually have a proper shopping experience as though you were going to one of the high street stores. And so they're walking and they pick up their clothes, and then there's someone that does the makeup, and then they drink, and then, drink like nice tea, and then they have conversations, and they get pampered. And some of these women, one of them was crying, just talking about how it just takes them away for that moment from their challenges. It was powerful.
I look beautiful because Dress for Success makes it so. They made me beautiful. They create this opportunity for women to come around, just enjoy yourself. Pick whatever look good in you. Like one would say, the one that will fit you.
I was expecting to see a pompous, big woman, and saying, no, drop that, you can't take that and stuff. But she was like, you know what, if it fits you, you can have it. So I was like, oh wow, nice.
I think every time we sit and speak to someone and they tell us about themselves, that's a valuable moment, because you learn from other people. You sometimes sit down and like, oh gosh, I'm having a bad day, and then you meet someone like the lady that I said that has cancer, and she's not walking around like, what, I've had a bad day.
We didn't have anything on men's power dressing.
Unfortunately not. Not that we don't need it ourselves, because first impressions do count. But one episode that was particularly striking for me too as well was the one that we did on the 22nd of November with the late Chaz B's brother, Chukwuma. And we also talked about Chaz B. It was really powerful. Chukwuma had two major brushes with death, 10 years apart. Wow. One was a very significant accident. The second one is before his 40th birthday, he had a major heart attack with about 90% blockage of the arteries. And it's amazing he survived, because I think it was about 17 hours before he got the proper treatment. He was being treated for malaria before. And then to learn, about Chaz B from Chukwuma as well. Chaz B was somebody who, put it this way, went from life in the nightclubs to being somebody who came to know Christ and inspired so many people through his very, very popular program. I think it was called Life Issues with Chaz B. That really touched me. And again, Chukwuma being a long-standing friend of mine, I could really identify with that. So it's just amazing to see transformation happen through Jesus Christ.
Having a 99% blockage in your main artery, there's not much after 99, right? You're pretty much done, especially if you don't actually get the surgery for quite a while.
Early enough.
So I think the way God likes to do it is to make it clear that it was him, because it's such an impossible situation.
Yes. And I remember interviewing Chaz B himself a few years back, and my first impressions were the way he dressed, who's this
He was a dapper dresser, wasn't
yes.
he? Yeah.
But then when he started talking about Jesus, and I realized that this guy's life has been transformed by Jesus. So you don't judge a book by its cover.
Yes.
You know, and that was really good fun. Great guy to know. It was such a shame that he had to pass on so early.
I used to listen to his show. I remember when I used to work in investment banking, every time you'd be in traffic, and that's just what made traffic bearable. So I used to look forward to his program, and I'll put it on, and I'll just listen, and then the traffic just passes by, and then it just showed that Nigerians are going through so many challenges, and they just need an opportunity or a platform to be able to share. Those people are keeping a lot of things, and it's causing depression. So that program allowed people to share their problems. It was amazing.
It's amazing how many problems we have. There are people dealing with all sorts of things. The way we treat women is horrible. So there's people in, marriage situations that the wife is always wrong, even though the husband is the issue. Charles B was able to deal with those things head on, because he sort of, his guide and compass was the truth, the Bible. Yes. He didn't really look at anything else, and he didn't really care how you felt based on the information he told you.
Well, I mean, I certainly hope that what we do on this program, it's about real people with real life issues. Hopefully it helps give some people relief, or at least learn about things that make their lives easier, learn about Christ and many other things. I really hope that happens.
Over the years, we've brought people in who are doing things to help others, like the children with disabilities, especially not Down syndrome. What was the other one called? Cerebral palsy.
Yes.
And people are getting to know. And we had one young child that was brought in here after his father watched an episode dealing with cerebral palsy, and he thought his child had cerebral palsy.
Yes.
Well, we've been able to do quite a lot for that child because we helped the father get a job. We got the child into a special school, and everything's going fine with him.
Yeah, and actually, one episode I remember doing much earlier in the year was about children with speech impediments, and there was one young man that came on set. It was his first time on television, so you can imagine how that felt for him. But to see the courage of going from his early childhood, where he more or less felt ostracized because he was the odd one out, to building confidence, and then the creative side of him as well. He brought some things he'd made of vase, wallets, book covers. It shows you that, people never should give up. Because even if you have a challenge in one area, God gives you many other talents to do other things. That was awesome to see that.
These children, they have potentials. And for the short time we work with that boy, he can play so many musical instruments. Though he came from a Muslim background, they love those things. I remember when we were doing the end of the year party that time, the parent came and they saw him playing the musical instrument to sing the national anthem. The mother was crying. How come? So my son can do this.
Talk about giving up. Remember, little by little.
I was just thinking about that now. This lady, Fadike, she's been through sickness upon sickness upon sickness. I mean, all sorts of names. Like, you literally want to go to the dictionary when you read her book. Yes. But the amazing thing was, she is a fighter. She's strong. She's constantly, she's not sitting there thinking, God, why is all this happening to me? No, she's just going on. And so as she's able to overcome a challenge, and it started off when she was pregnant. And even now she was 6, even when she came, she said she had just had another scare of cancer. But just seeing God in everything, and then she's just full of so many testimonies. And she's written a book called Little by Little, a memoir of divine healing. And that book is it's a small book. You can finish it in one sitting, but it just shows the power of God as God the healer.
Yes. Even when the blood results are showing very terrible results, I say, I'm not moved by what I see. I'm not by what I believe. I'm only by what I believe, and I believe by what I see or what I feel. I'm only by what I believe, and I believe that by his stripes I am healed. And then I believe and I wait and see what God is going to do. That's what I have done over the years. It may sound very easy now. The journey was not easy.
And of course, the testimonies are important because it's when other people can learn from your experience. It gives them, first of all, an understanding about God, but it gives them hope. I like to believe as well.
And we do get responses, don't we?
Yes, we do. I remember I did one on the Do It Afraid, and someone sent an email saying she'd watched one of the ladies that came on, and she could just, her story was like she was saying her own story and how she's at a pivotal point in her life where she needs to make a decision. Yes. And so we get all these feedback from, even from, I think we had one all the way from
Dominican Republic. Yes, I recently interviewed Bolanle Austin Peters about, you know, the creative arts and the impact of that for Nigeria. And, you know, somebody reached out for her who had been watching the program from the Dominican Republic, and that's gotten them connected now. And who knows where that will go from? But it was just awe-inspiring to know that people are watching it all over the place. Yes, it's awesome, truly. But Pastor, out of interest, I mean, what has this meant for you, though? How has Heart of a Matter impacted you personally this year?
Well, you know, the viewers have not seen as much of me this year as they probably saw in the years before, and it's deliberate, because I want you guys to begin to be more, but just knowing that we are touching lives, even if it's just one life that we're able to impact, if it's just one person that gets to know that they can make it, it's a success story for me. So I think, you know, I thoroughly enjoy bringing it to the public, and I know you guys do as well.
Can we talk about the church? Because I remember we had Leke Older who talked about the digital evangelist. Can we talk about that, Pastor?
Yeah, well, Leke Older completely changed people's perception of church. You know, we would have said it's rude, it's wrong for people to use their mobile phones, tweeting and sending Facebook messages during the service. And then I asked Leke, what sort of church would you build if you had to build a church now? And you know, his answer was, I'll make all the walls screens, so that as people are tweeting, their messages go up on the walls. So the pastor gets feedback, because the generation of Christian today is different to the generation of, you know, we need to get feedback. What are people thinking? What are they talking about? What is trending? You know,
the average church can't sit more than 5,000 to 10,000 people, but the pastor on social media can reach 1 million people with just one post. There is no church that can accommodate 1 million people. So it becomes very obvious to me that the social media is an implement for evangelism in this, what we call the end times. It's so obvious, and the cost of social media relative to acquisition of a soul and relative to what happens in church is entirely minimal. All a church needs to do is to set its sights on that thing, devote resources to it, and the church will reach more people than it can ever reach. So social media is it. It's an entire world.
And so really, the church has to get out of the four walls and into social media. We really need to have a presence, because if social media is just used to recruit jihadists, then we have failed. You know, we need to have an alternative message that is just as interesting, that people can enjoy. You know, because a lot of the time people think that Christian messages are boring, and so we need to liven them up and make them speak and also entertain.
No, but it's like with any conversation, isn't it? If you're speaking to somebody who only understands Russian, but you're speaking French or Gaelic to that person, you're not going to converse. So, especially with the new generation, we need to understand how they do communicate and find more effective ways of doing that.
I was in London up till earlier on this week, and there are lights everywhere.
Awesome,
but everybody's talking about Christmas. Nobody's talking about the reason for Christmas. And it seems to me that the spirit of Christmas has more to do with alcohol than it does with Christianity. So you know, it's important to have a nice time, have a break, but at the same time to draw people back and say, you know, this is not just a holiday. We're celebrating somebody. Jesus is the reason for this season. Well, this program has come to an end, and we'll have to sign off now from Opuiyo.
Have a very Merry Christmas, a prosperous and a wonderful New Year, and God bless you all.
From Omi.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year.
And for me, it's have a wonderful time at Christmas, a very successful and prosperous 2016, and keep on tuning in to the Heart of the Matter. We'll be back again with our next episode. Until then, stay blessed.